Welcome to the Life Rocks podcast. In this podcast, we explore how nature, science, education, and culture can benefit all children and future generations. This is a show for educators, parents, mentors, and anyone interested in making the lives of our children, families, and communities better. So sit back, take a breath, and enjoy the show. And now for your host, Asher Cloran.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Life Rocks podcast. I'm here today with the amazing Joanna Rushton. Jo has been a trainer in the CHEK Institute of the Holistic Lifestyle Coaching, has been a mentor to me for the wonderful CHEK coaching programs, and is now a teacher in the Path of Light, which is an amazing meditation and self-development course that has been developed and cultivated by Ishtar. Jo has started organic farms and been a chef, an amazing chef, has written cookbooks, has been training with the CHEK Institute for now over 10 years, is it, Jo, as a trainer?
It would be now, yes.
Yeah, wow, amazing. And you've been a bodybuilder, you've done competitive things, you've had an illustrious career in health, lifestyle, fitness, coaching, food, and wellness. And I'm super stoked to have you on the show because, yeah, you've been one of my teachers and a big influence around the track in Australia and CHEK. And so, yeah, welcome. Happy to have you here.
Thanks, Asha. We've been looking forward to this. We've been trying to get some dates for quite some time, and here we are, finally.
Yes. And, you know, you've had a busy period. Jo's just let me know that she's finally gotten out of Sydney and into Northern Rivers area, which is, you know, one of the most beautiful sought after places in Australia. So congratulations for the green change.
Thank you. Yeah, it's beautiful up here, really. It's been a journey of patience. You know, it's been a dream for the last 8 years to finally be up here, and we are now. But you know, it takes time for things to align and patience in that alignment. Otherwise, we can just, you know, push our will on what it is that we want and not necessarily have the experience with the same level of grace and ease. So I'm glad I've stayed the course and been patient.
Sure. Okay. And I'd love to hear from you, like what's part of that patience? Because I know that a lot of people face that dichotomy, especially nowadays. I'm in a city, I'm with a family, it's not the place that I want to be, but X, Y, and Z is taking place and I've got to have patience. So what was that for you, and how did you pace yourself?
Actually, you know, it's really been a journey of learning to, you know, listen for when we receive that higher guidance. A big lesson for me has been, just because I received that higher guidance doesn't mean that the divine timing for that is right now. And that's been a huge lesson, you know, receiving that guidance and feeling in complete alignment with, yes, that's where we're going, what we're needing to do. And then continuing to listen to divine timing versus, you know, what your ego, yeah, that sounds great, let's make it happen now.
Yeah.
And that isn't always in alignment with, you know, with that guidance. And that's been a big lesson, really, waiting for that to come to fruition. And that's been about learning to really feel what's flowing and what's not. And as much as, you know, you can be given a vision and what is in a higher potential for you, you start moving towards that. And obstacles may, you know, come and situations occur and you're like, why isn't this flowing? You know, it really feels like higher guidance. And sometimes it's, as I said, it's about tuning into the divine timing of all of that to come together, all the different pieces of the puzzle to come together for that greater potential. And, you know, honestly, that's been sort of 8 years, accepting, first of all, the, you know, for, you know, back then, our 2 younger boys, really feeling, would it be in the highest for them to be pulled out of school and relocated at that kind of really important stage for them, with friends, and creating a sense of self within their own communities.
Sure.
And that had to be taken into consideration. So we kind of went, okay, let's wait. And then my mother-in-law, she got really sick, you know, and we nursed her through pancreatic cancer to her passing. And, you know, of course, in hindsight, so perfect that we hadn't moved, you know, when perhaps my mom wanted it to all happen. So we were there for that. And then the next thing came, and my parents back in the UK, they needed to, you know, be supported. So, you know, went over there for that. And it really has been just at the beginning of this year, coming back in January, landing and recognizing that, okay, now's a good time, and feeling into that, and you know, looking for evidence and confirmation that now's the right time. And the moment we put it back out there, everything just lined up, like bang, 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 bang. And we had packed the house, moved, was on the land of some very dear friends of ours, because, you know, they literally just phoned us 24 hours after we landed back in from the UK. They said, so how was your trip? And we've been thinking, you know, there's no way you're going to find somewhere while you're down in Sydney. So why don't you just pack up, get a container, put it on our property, come and stay, and then you can have a look where you want to be. Now, you know, if that isn't the universe going, okay.
What an offer.
And so you start to kind of become attuned to where there is ease and grace and flow.
Yep.
And where there's resistance, where for whatever reason you might not know what it is, or and you might not like what it is, but there's resistance in the flow, and you got to listen to that. Otherwise you can be pushing through your will, and you know, that's not always, it's never going to be in the place for you, and you end up, you know, experiencing a whole lot more struggle than you need to when things are ready to flow, supported. So that's been a big lesson.
That's a really big lesson, and I'd like to dive in a little bit more here, is themes of patience, divine timing, and then I think it's also appreciating what we have in the moment. And I've noticed this dance over the past few years, and I think a lot of people have, probably because of the pressures of the world around us. The outer world has been chaotic, and then that stimulates everyone to think that there's greener grass out there. There is greener grass out there for sure, guaranteed, but are you really enjoying the grass that you've already got? And that's been a big theme for me, because you know, I'm a self-proclaimed country guy. I like to be in nature. I don't like cities, but there I was, dumped into city. Divine timing, the flow of it happened. I couldn't deny it. To help a friend out, who was also passing on from leukemia. So I can feel you there on that one. Yeah. And yeah, it really taught me to drop back deeper into that moment, and yeah, enjoy the things that I've got on my plate rather than the things that are off in the future. So
I'm really glad you brought that up, Asha, because that was also another huge lesson for me, unbeknown at the time, but what kept me present and in the now, and not too much, oh, but I want to be up there, and oh, but, you know, in this forecast future, and then missing out on the now. You know, a lesson in all of that was, okay, hold on a second, we are here, and what can you really be in appreciation and gratitude for where you are right now?
Yeah.
Without wishing to be on the other side of the fence, without wishing to be, you know, wherever it is that you're creating a comparison for.
Yeah.
And as you say, yes, you know, the grass can be greener, but it can only be greener. You can only really appreciate that greenness if it's cultivated within you. If you, you know, if you uproot yourself and go and put yourself on that green pasture, and you haven't come into alignment with yourself, then you're on that green pasture and you're still not satisfied.
That's right.
You know, and you're still feeling empty in some way, still searching, still looking, still there's this void, still not satisfied, still not content. And yet you're where you said you always wanted to be. And so, hold on, you know, where's that missing link? And it really is in that gratitude, learning to become grateful and appreciative of the small and big things wherever you are right now. And so those 8 years were as much a great lesson in patience and divine timing, but it also really taught me how to make the most out of where I was. And that's now made coming up here even more enriching for me, because I'm not in a place of lack within me. I was still able to feel fulfilled wherever I was, and now it's just more feeling of richness.
Amazing. Yeah, I think there's this, you know, the tension between opposites, and if we're always running from one to the other, then there's no depth there, there's no experience, there's no time spent in the tension of the opposites. There's just, you know, impulse, like running by impulse. So when you end up in a place and you're not appreciating it, it's almost like time will give you more and more time until you've like saturated the appreciation for whatever it is, a city-based lifestyle that's not like AKA ideal, so that once you get to the ideal, damn, it's tasty. You know why you're there, you know how you got there, you know why it's good.
That's
Contrast therapy, that's what I call it.
Yeah, contrast therapy. I love it, you know, and it's in that we recognize that, you know, happiness, or what I like to call contentment, you know, it's an inside job. You know, happiness is an inside job. There's nothing on the outer world that's really going to create happiness if you haven't learned to cultivate that vibration within you.
Yes. So how, like, over these 8 years and this learning curve of being like, okay, I know I want my family and myself to be elsewhere, but we're here. What were those things that you picked up along the way that were those touchstones of joy, or those ways or habits that you created around enjoying what you have?
Well, you know, the last 3 years, I mean, COVID was, you know, for me personally, such a beautiful opportunity to be at home and do, you know, we created beautiful garden beds at home, and you know, things that myself and my partner decided, well, you know, we don't have to wait until we move to do this. Why don't we just create some veggie gardens where we are, you know? So what? We're in a rental, you know, big deal. Let's start doing and enjoying the space we're in, and what can we do to enrich the experience of where we are. So we started up a whole lot of garden beds where we were, and you know, that was just awesome, just getting out there in the soil, and you know, creating a soil recipe for you know, the ecoclimate where we were in, and the things that we grew were just insane. I mean, I've never seen cucumbers. I'm telling you, these cucumbers and zucchinis were ridiculous. You know, and so just, you know, pretty much growing everything that we needed of a green nature, you know, probably just minus our potatoes, you know.
Awesome.
So that was one thing. And I moved out of having my own studio, you know, a number of years ago, probably 2 or 3 years prior to COVID hitting. So I'd made that transition to being more online. I'd made that transition to working out of home. And I'm somebody who's really quite disciplined. So I don't find working from home a hard balance to create. As you know, I love what I do. So it's not like anyone has to, you know, whip my ass to get shit done.
You whip your own ass. I know that about you.
You know? And so I really loved that balance. I really loved, you know, being able to create a work-life balance for myself. And then, you know, where we were living, you know, rather than projecting myself to where we wanted to be, it was, hold on a second, we've got the whole of Land Cove National Park on our doorstep. You walk down a couple of houses, go out through there, you know, out through the back of the bush, and you're in this beautiful national park where you could
mangroves, isn't it? The mangroves through there?
There are some, but just really beautiful gum trees and bush and, you know, dense bush. And part of it makes up part of the Great Walk, the Great North Walk, you know, which can be a few weeks if you took it from Sydney, you know, all the way up past the Central Coast on, you know, as a
beautiful.
So there was just so much more to explore on our backyard when, you know, when you accepted where you were and what you had, then opportunities would open up and you'd start to have potential in your own backyard to, you know, create that exploration and contentment. So
yeah
they're the sort of things that we, you know, really looked at doing over that period that has, you know, seen us through till now.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I hear that you're basically bringing the future forwards to yourself in small ways.
Yes.
I think that's a trick that we get into where we've got the goal out there, but and we think that we're just going to start magically once we get there. But that if we've got that urge inside of us, just take a little bit of that urge and bring it back to here and start a garden bed now. You don't need the farm. You don't need the land. You just need a planter box in the city. Exactly. It's fine.
Right. You know, or even if you're in an apartment in the city, which, you know, years and years and years ago, it was, you know, down to a little herb box on the window.
100%. Yeah, there's always a touch point for enjoying nature and enjoying yourself, whatever the context. Enjoying what's there, like this giant forest and national park we have out the back. Well, you know, another trick we get into, oh, that park's not my favorite park, or you know, that national park's not my favorite national park. Okay. Yeah. No, and that national park in particular, I spent time there as a child because my grandparents' house backed onto that national park, a section of which was the mangrove section. So
that's why you know it so well.
Lane Cove. Yeah. And improving where you are, like your home office setup. And I think people learnt that in COVID, because they're not going out to work anymore. So now home office is the thing. And when you do that, you realize, I realized the how much clarity it gave me to have meaningful spaces in my home and to improve the quality of the spaces and the meaning of the spaces. So, you know, each space has a clear purpose. I found that something I got into in COVID.
Yeah. It's that real feng shui of that space that you're in and really making it work for that different vibration. You know, that you can transition from one space to another in your home and it really offer you the energy that it needs to offer you, you know? And, you know, that's the other thing before we moved, making most of our space, again had this, just wanted to really have a beautiful altar and really anchor a really strong portal. And I just said to Susie one day, I said, let's do it now.
Yeah, nice.
Now. And so we, over time, we invested in more and more beautiful crystals. And, over the last, 5-8 years, I do so much more energy work with my clients and energy healing that, having that grounded portal is so important. And, we created that in the place. And in fact, when Susie's mum moved in with us through her, her transition, when we got to that stage of palliative care, nurses would, come in twice a day, rotating and changing medication and everything. And, over those last 6 to 8 weeks, every nurse that came in, because it would obviously be a different team, every day, every nurse would comment on the energy in the space. They would, oh my God, it's just so calm, and there's just this sense of really being held the moment you walk through your front door, this energy. And that, that to me was, that's the portal that we have anchored. So
that's really cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Can you dive in a little bit here as to what would be the value of creating an altar? What would some of the elements you'd be doing as an altar, and how you could do that as a family? And just briefly, in my book and in nature practice and some of the things we share in Life Rocks, we talk about creating seasonal tables with children, or bringing in the elements of nature and onto a table inside. So from your perspective, what's the power and the value here, and how can people practice it?
Well, it all, it stems with an intention, and what is that intention that you're wanting to create in the space that you're in? And that intention is, of course, a vibration. It's a consciousness being energy with intention. And that intention, depending on what it is, holds a frequency. And of course, our intention was really to bring a healing energy. So a vibration that sits, in the 5th dimension and above, which brings an energy in that helps to harmonize and balance all conscious energy. And so when somebody comes in and they perhaps are stressed or feeling chaotic or caught up in drama, they come into this field of energy, a bit like a container. And, to the degree in which they're willing to receive, then all of a sudden their own field starts to be harmonized and balanced, like a tuning fork. We are a tuning fork. And if we are opened, if we're willing to receive, we can walk into any environment and attune ourselves to that vibration. Now, the more conscious we become, the more aware we need to be as to what it is that we're attuning to, and do we want that in our field, But in the situation of what we were creating was a very healing space, which was really about creating a frequency of energy that anybody walks into can feel harmonized and balanced and centered and calm through the portal we created, which included a number of different types of crystals, mainly selenite and rose quartz, because selenite really opens and anchors a space. And then rose quartz really offers a beautiful centering, calming frequency, and helps you to come into your heart's consciousness, come into your heart space. And then we would have clear quartz and amethyst mixed in around the place, and we really, the center, we had a fireplace, which is where it wasn't a usable fireplace anymore, so we used that kind of great area and fireplace to put a huge rose quartz that
Nice.
I sourced from a beautiful lady up on the Central Coast who had just finished a 3-year project of grounding a portal up there on her land. And so just, for listeners, understanding that crystals have their own consciousness. They offer an intention. So they offer a frequency that, again, if we open to receive that frequency, it helps to bring in that energy into our own field based on what that crystal is programmed, encoded to offer. Yes. Yeah. And so, that's what we would offer in our space. And Susie, she's such the nature child. Every day she would go out and bring something from nature, as you were saying before, something from outside, and it would always be added to the altar. And so there was always a refreshing of flowers or plants, or I see behind you, you've got this beautiful big shell. Right. And a couple of them. So gorgeous. Look at that. Stunning. Just stunning. And so Susie has some of those brought back from the Solomon Islands, where she grew up. And we have those included. So an altar can be essentially made up of a collection of whatever speaks to you, that is a representation of Mother Gaia co-creating with you to create a space that is peaceful, healing, and harmonious to you. And that's all about tapping into your relationship to Mother Gaia and really feeling what that is, and learning to bring her into your everyday, and the ritual of gratitude and the ritual of honoring abundance, because your altar, an altar for me really reminds me of the abundance in all things, and being able to bring something fresh in and replenish your altar with something that's alive, and that Mother Earth is gifting us in every moment. It really brings me present to just how abundant we are with all that we need. All that we need. The ego might want lots of things, but when it comes down to what we need, we're always taken care of with what we need.
Always have what we need, not always what we want.
Exactly.
Beautiful. So, I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. That's how we made our altar work for us. And I'm just, in fact, you probably can't, maybe if I tip my down here by the side of me, all of these, they've yet to be unwrapped, but it's probably about a good 300 kilos worth of selenite that has
300 kilos. That's a lot of kilos.
Yeah. They're about,
wow.
They're about 20-30 kilos each.
Wow. Epic.
About 15 of them. 15, 20.
Epic.
Yeah. So I've yet to set them up, but just waiting for the right space and just waiting for the right time.
I think, and I think crystals, just to go there for a second, are pretty awe-inspiring things that, whether you're a child, whether you're an adult, crystals are amazing. Whether or not you even believe in the spiritual side of crystals, or whether you just love how they look and the formations they take, they're undeniably awesome. And in crystallography, which is the study of the atomic structure of crystals, when we look at the atomic level of how crystals are formed, they're these layering matrices of particular shapes based upon the minerals that they're made out of. And these shapes at an atomic geometrical level have a state of resonance. So, shapes have certain angles. Those angles create certain frequencies, bend light in certain ways, and then this creates a representative form. So I think that these qualities that speak to us through crystals have something to do with the bending of this light, the changing of frequencies, and they're stable in this form that is like, eternally represented for them in this state. And I think science is still yet to fully tie this in a bow and make it clear to everyone. But
Yes.
For the listeners, I don't think that crystals are woo at all, and that whatever woo is involved in crystal land is just still coming to settle in terms of scientific understanding, and that there's a lot here to unpack.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And Paul, we to what you're speaking of, the sacred geometry, what's offered through that alignment of the subatomic particles through the sacred geometry. I know Paul loves the biogeometry, which is bringing in a resonance through different shapes, using drawings, using metal material, pendants. Some include, crystals in amongst that, but with the biogeometry, it's more about utilizing of the different sacred geometry shapes that you talk about, that's within the crystals that you can't see unless you went in at a
microscopic level.
With the biogeometry, that's what is the focus. It is the focus of that beautiful the different layering of shapes and what the shapes offer as an attractor, and an attractor of energy, and how they will alchemize the field of light around you. And there's plenty of science in that.
So much science.
So much science in that.
And it's even reflected in the way we hold our own structure and form. Like if I got around like this all day, what kind of what am I resonating as? Where if I'm like got a straight back and my shoulders are there and my eyes are nice and relaxed, like what kind of energy do you put out then? So it's all pretty obvious once we kind of look at it at that level. I know your boys, Jo, are now on the other side of they're young adults. young men
19 and 21. Yes.
So you're a mother who's now probably breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief. You've made it through the hardest part, and you've probably faced a lot of uncomfortable emotions of raising children in a crazy modern world and environment. So I don't know, maybe you can take us on a bit of a journey of some of the things that you thought that you used to really concern you that now maybe don't concern you, some of the challenges that you faced in terms of facing issues of development or concerns around learning and development and behavior. Whatever's springing forth for you, I'd really love to hear your insight, because you're someone who's in touch with everyone's problems on a day-to-day basis, and also in touch with the solutions that people can implement. And really interested to hear your thoughts here.
Well, there's two keys that I'd really love to share, or two perspectives. First of all, is I come from the perspective where I'm not the birth mother. I'm a stepmom, which does lend to a very different perspective and a very different experience of parenting.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Life Rocks is not just a podcast. It is an education foundation centered around connecting children to the magic of nature through earth sciences. As a self-funded foundation and startup, we are constantly seeking support so that we can continue our great work. So if you feel called to donate to Life Rocks, please head down to the show notes and find the relevant donation link. We accept regular money as well as cryptocurrencies. We greatly appreciate you, our Life Rocks community. Now, back to the show.
I mean, firstly, I never wanted children. But hey, here
Get
I
what
am.
you need. Get what you need.
That's it. Other guy will provide us what we need at every step to support us on our journey of learning and growing. And I probably had a maternal urge that lasted probably 2 minutes in my 20s and 30s.
Wonder what those 2 minutes were like, huh?
Right. All I remember was that they flashed past very quickly.
Yeah.
And I was very much at peace with that, very much at peace, when the last sort of, I guess, conscious thought in my mid 30s towards, am I sure about this decision? And I was very much at peace with that choice. And then, my partner, Susie, that I met, I would say 13, I think we're 13 or 14 years this September. When I met her, her two boys were 5 and 7.
Yeah.
So I'd managed to avoid the the very early stages, which I was grateful for. However, I was stepping into their life at a very, emotionally challenging time for them.
Channeling the challenges.
Yes,
at 5 and 7. Yeah.
very much so. And they were meeting a lot of their insecurities around safety and security. She had left her husband, about a year previously to meeting me, was stepping into something that she never thought that she would ever step into, a relationship with a woman. So, that was massive for her.
Yeah.
Let alone navigating what did that mean for the boys, and and then navigating their father's response to that. And so there was a lot of energy, a lot of emotional energy, to be balanced, to be navigated in those early years.
Yeah.
And honestly, Asher, I think that I made a choice very early on in the relationship that I was there to co-parent, but I wasn't their mother, and I didn't want to take that role. And I also made a very strong choice to myself that I wasn't changing who I was to try to win them over or get them on my side or anything like that. So I was really, when I say happy is not the right word. I was just very sure in myself as to what I was going to tolerate and what I wasn't. And what was important to me was that I just stayed steadfast in who I was. And sooner or later, they would find some safety and security in a non-wavering energy.
Yes, that's
right?
great.
They're around Jo, they know what to expect.
Yep.
And that way, over time, they could feel a sense of stability if they were left with me or were in my presence or that sort of thing.
Yes.
And Asha, we went through the first few years, we went through hell.
Yeah.
In a lot of respects, very challenging with their father, and challenging to navigate what was fed back to them. And they were obviously within two homes, and living by one set of rules in one set, in one home, another set of rules in another home.
Very common and challenging.
Very common,
thing.
Very challenging, very volatile for the children emotionally.
Yes.
All they're looking to do is to feel loved, to feel safe, to feel secure. And unbeknown to them, they're changing their behavior in order to acquire that love.
Yep.
And they learn just not through conscious observance, but through this subconscious and unconscious observing of the field around them. They change their behavior to suit what they think dad needs. Then they change their behavior to suit what they think mum needs, all with this unconscious attempt to be loved, to be accepted, approved of, appreciated. And that's exhausting for a child when, they're really changing like their hats based on who they think they need to be to get what they subconsciously are looking for.
Yeah.
And, kids do that at the best of times within a stable mum and dad unit, let alone how they navigate that within, divorced parents, and then a very different family unit, in both camps.
Yeah.
So, for me, of course, my values around living and around food and around just lifestyle choices were very different to what they would experience when they were with dad versus what they would experience with us. And it just, over time, it wasn't without pushback, and it wasn't without, a lot of confrontation at times, and a fallout of energy. And but Susie and I kind of stayed headstrong. It was, we were always on the same page. We had to do a lot of discussing about what that was, when they weren't around, so that when they were, we could both back each other up,
shoot straight
and be on the same parenting page. And I think that that's a really important, no matter whether you're, in a married partnership, of mum and dad of those children, or whether you're facilitating something of two camps, and I'll say, you know what, Asha, I was just with our youngest, Phoenix, maybe about 6 weeks ago. We were up at a friend's place having lunch, and he and I were at one end of the table chatting to a friend of ours, Imra, and Imra was asking him, how do you feel about, who you are right now, as a 19-year-old, and what, where life is going for you, and how you feel within your own skin, and that sort of thing. And there were some pretty deep questions.
That's a big question.
They were, he was quizzing him on some, sort of more introspective questions. And Phoenix is very self-reflective. And he's quite an empath, so he can really sort of feel energy, and learning to understand what that is, and what's his and what someone else's, and where the boundaries are. But what was really, really beautiful, and I guess for me, the first time I've ever heard it out of his mouth, when he turned around and he said, I actually feel so grateful for all that Jo has taught us, because I couldn't receive that from my dad, and I couldn't receive it from mum. And Jo has, just seeded certain things in me to explore whenever I'm ready. And and things that she would refer to and bring up and, you know, always come back to. And as much as I didn't appreciate it then and would, you know, revolt and become rebellious and push back and, you know, this is bullshit and, you know, all the rest of it, he said, I can really sit now and be so appreciative of stuff that I understand and have an understanding of because of what Jo's taught us. And I just sat there, and inside I was having a bit of a cry of, you know, gratitude and joy, because I was just like, wow, I really haven't taken a moment to consider the impact of participating in parenting. You know, it's just something you end up doing every day and doing every day, you know, and it becomes part of your life. And it's not until those moments, and I'm saying this as a stepmom's perspective, which really comes with its pros and cons. But in that perspective, it was a beautiful an acknowledgement of what a position as a stepmom can offer when you don't try to be the mum. And you're just steadfast in who you are, and you're steadfast in your values, and you're steadfast in sharing those values, being a living example of those values. Sooner or later, they rub off. They're always rubbing off. And I guess sooner or later you get to see how much of that. And that was a moment for me. You know, and that was only 6 weeks ago. Right. And that was a moment for me to go, oh, wow. You know, they've taken on a whole lot more than I thought they ever had. You know, I always thought it was just one ear and out the other, and, you know, they're going to do what they do. And yet you don't realize just how much sticks. And so that has been, you know, that has been really beautiful. They both will say how appreciative they are for being taught what it is to eat well. Oliver, who's now moved out of home, whenever he comes home, he's just like, oh my God, home cooked food. Oh my God, you've got no idea how I appreciate it. You know, I took it for granted, and I just moaned and groaned sometimes for all the vegetables plate. But now I come home and I'm just like, oh, please, yes, can I have a second?
More veggies.
Dude, what are you living off these days? He's like, you don't want to know. He goes, you know, I can't always afford, you know, exactly what I want. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, you can sort of look at growing some, you know how to do it. You participated in, you know, that at home. And he's like, yeah, I know. It's just the time, and I'm focused on other things. And that's normal, right? That's normal. So it's them having an appreciation for good food, them having an appreciation for you know, water. I mean, neither of them will drink tap water. I mean, you go out and they're like,
great,
they'll smell the chlorine and they're like, no, I'm not drinking. You know, so just things like other people wouldn't think twice about or have an awareness or even be able to smell, they have a reference point for, you know, they have a comparison, and they're very aware to that sort of thing. And slowly but surely, you know, 19 and 21 is still young, but I tell you what, Asher, I look at them in comparison to who I was at their age, and they are so much more worldly. Oh my God, so much more worldly, so much more informed, politically, culturally. They blow me away.
Amazing.
They really blow me away. I mean, there is no doubt that I find that they're far more informed than I am, and that I'm now in my own little bubble, and they're out, you know, they're out there exploring, and you know, and I guess that's partly the difference between, you know, I didn't grow up with a mobile phone, you know, I didn't grow up with a computer, I didn't grow up with the constant unavailability of information that we have in our world of technology today.
Yeah.
And again, pros and cons to it both, pros and cons. I mean,
Yep.
some of the pros are how informed they are, how much more tuned in to what is happening. And I can only speak from my two boys,
Yeah.
tuned in to what is happening at a global level, to what is happening at a local political level. I mean, our 19-year-old was just able to vote for the first time this year, and he couldn't wait to get down there. He was just like,
sure,
having my say,
ready to go.
He was asking me, who are you going to vote for, and he's literally telling me why it should be this person and not this, and why it should be this party and not this party, and and I was just
getting
like,
excited.
I
No clue.
at his age, I'd just be like, what's a party? other than the one that you go to and have a rave at, That was, they were my teenage years.
Really?
So yeah, really, really different. And I think, raising them, I'm just so proud. As Susie says one thing, she said, look, if we can get them to 25, the age of 25, then she said, I've done my job. If there's, what did she say? She said, if they're still alive at 25, then we've done our job. And
the new motto of modern parents.
Right, alive,
still alive at 25.
And I understand, now that cognitive, executive part of the brain that keeps us level-headed and gives us that perspective of choice and thought, and being able to process our emotions and being able to process our choices with an element of awareness over cause and effect. That part of our brain doesn't fully ground until we're 25.
Yeah, I can relate.
And so, until that happens, we, boys especially, are subject to silly choices at times, especially when they're under peer pressure, and especially when they're looking to, prove themselves. And if we can get them past that point, then, those choices tend to settle out, level out. And, that's when we hope that we can take a sigh of release and relief and just enjoy things and not worry every time the phone goes at midnight or something.
Yeah. And then the 25-year-old will start helping you out. That's what happens.
That's exactly right. So it's been a hell of a ride, Asha, being a step parent, because being a parent when they are yours and you've born them and bared them through your being, we know our family are our greatest teachers. They're our greatest triggers. They're our greatest teachers. So, they're going to offer us our biggest learnings. And I, who, as a stepmom, I can contest to that 100%. My greatest learnings about me, who I am, and what I'm choosing, the boys have, both of them.
They've stimulated that.
Phoenix especially, he is my greatest teacher. He is always teaching me something about myself. He's
birth and death in the name.
Right? Totally.
Yeah. Appropriately titled.
He is so appropriately titled. Like,
amazing.
I've come to fondly refer to him as regularly triggering growth within me.
That's so cool. I think this is, everything you've shared here is a really potent reminder to parents at different levels and stages. Um, one thing is parents need that reminder that their shitty little teenager that's always kicking up a fuss or denying or whatever, they're going to thank you later on. And they're going to thank you for all of that wisdom, boundaries, all the tough love. I think as well, stepping into that step parent position, it's a different type of authority. It's not as, it hasn't been at the heart of their birth and childhood. So it's a little bit outside. And I know you as a person, you're disciplined, you're focused, you're learned, you're knowledgeable. So you have this structured type of energy that's, probably like grandmother, grandfather type of energy. And that can have with it the tough love vibe. But if it's balanced with love, and you know your value, you stand where you are, you create that stability, you represent those things, you can guarantee any child later on in life is going to turn around and thank you for it from the bottom of their heart, because they'll feel all those lessons and they'll know it. So for any parents out there who are in that phase of not feeling appreciated, not feeling loved, love's it. What does Paul say? Love's a boomerang.
Yeah, it comes
like
back,
that.
right?
There's your example.
And that's it, and love is consciousness becoming aware of itself, and that's one of those, definitions of love. And the other thing that I would say as well is that because I'm very open-minded to exploration and experiencing. So, when teenagers become teenagers and they start to explore and they start to experiment with drugs, with various substances,
philosophies or educations or
all of it,
groups, whatever. Yeah,
exactly. I've never been, oh, you shouldn't do this, you mustn't do that. It's always been about trying to support them to explore things intelligently.
Yeah.
To ask the right questions. And, this is where they'll come to me now and, tell me everything about a substance that I got no idea about, and they're doing their research and they're, choosing to go and self-explore, which at the end of the day, I'm not going to control. I'm not going to have a say over. They're going to do what they choose to do. But what's more important is that I keep a dialogue, a conversation, and a space open whereby they can feel safe and not judged to come and say, look, this happened. Or, I tried this and, I experienced this. Can I talk to you about it? Or, so have a safe place to come and not be judged through their choices, but to be supported to come into a conscious awareness of what they're creating through their choices, so that they can, consider that when they choose second time, third time.
Exactly. And feel like they've got someone there if anything ever does, slip up or whatever, that it's not a hard conversation to have. I think that's exactly the type of relationship parents want to have with their children, is because children are going to explore, teenagers are going to explore, young adults are.
Yeah.
You can either have the door open for those conversations with a level of openness and ease and curiosity, or you can say, that's bad, this is bad, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. And your kid will never talk to you about half the things they do, guarantee it.
That's exactly right. And, how many parents I've noticed over the years, in this kind of conversation have outrightly chosen, never to share with their kids what they've done as a teenager. And, oh no, I can't knowing that about my past. Oh no. And I'm like,
yeah.
that's a beautiful opportunity to connect. That's a beautiful opportunity to relate. That's a beautiful opportunity. It's a teaching moment.
Yeah.
You know, that helps to plant a seed for them, through your experience, plant a seed of awareness. Not to, you know, that's a parent still sitting in fear of their own self-judgment. And, you know, that getting projected onto the child. When, you know, essentially they could be, you know, sharing their own childhood experience, you know, from a place that helps to bring awareness and education and relatability. And, you know, again, as I said, that sense of that child feeling I'm safe to come home and talk about this stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And it's almost like I'm identifying there's these different stages in the career of a parent where they have to shift tactics, because, you know, that first 8 years or whatever, it's all about security and safety. Like, you don't want to be talking to your 8-year-old about, oh, when I was 14, I went out to a party and blah, blah, blah. They don't give a crap. But once they're 16, say, and they are exploring and stuff, it's almost like the parent has to enter more into the stage of like a guide rather than like, or like a peer. It's more of a peer. Like, you're still the authority, but you're more on the level where you're just got to develop a bit more openness.
That's right. It's an opportunity to share experiences, because, you know, you're not in that place now where you're going to have the final say on what they do and don't do. And, you know, that place of authority, you actually don't have that anymore. You might limit yourself to the fact that you do, but you don't have that anymore. And that goes, you know, long before they hit 18, where legally you no longer have it.
Yes.
You know, essentially you really don't have it much past 13, 14.
Yeah. It's the bar of soap, isn't it? The really stronger you grip, the faster they slip.
That's it. That's exactly right. And, you know, if you can recognize that and come into an acceptance of that as a parent, and start to shift out of that, well, you must listen to me and do what I say. And they've been great learnings for me, you know, like I can hear myself in that.
Yeah.
And knowing when I've just had to let go, and where the sharing of my experiences have been far more important than trying to discipline them through their choices.
Yeah, from like an abstract sense of what's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Jo, this world is so crazy and diverse and wild, and things are constantly changing. Children are more on the pulse of, I guess, the things that are happening, say tech and AI. They're exposed to it. It's part of their culture. It just is what they do. My younger brother's, he's 4 years younger than I, and even he is more involved in technology through, you know, the chatting with friends online and the gaming and this sort of thing. Where do you see the future of childhood heading, and what is your wish for the children of Earth through this next stage of our evolution?
Oh, wow, Asha, such a big question.
It's a big one.
Well, what I do know is fighting what is and being in resistance to what is doesn't serve any of us.
Yeah.
So, you know, while we are in these evolutionary changes, I try to ground myself firstly back to, you know, what is important in the choices I make that are going to contribute to the sustainability of Mother Gaia and contribute to giving something back to her.
Yes.
as a being that's always receiving from her. So I'm not a technical based person, so technology is not my forte. Getting onto a Zoom call is probably as challenging as I want to have it be in my life. So I will be honest, I don't know enough about technology. But what I do believe is that with every new introduction of, whether it's AI, there is always going to be, from the mere fact that we are governed by polarity, there are always going to be benefits that, there are going to be pros and cons always on both sides. And my focus is, really being clear on what my values are and, what it is that I let into my own field and what it is I choose to focus on. If I start choosing to focus on AI technology and how I feel it's imposing on my personal privacy, and, in reality, nothing is private, and it hasn't been for a whole lot longer before AI became a thing. Privacy wasn't a thing. It's been since the internet was birthed. Any form of what you think is privacy was lost then. Anything since then has just been a refining of. So you can either focus on your fears and where you fear the world is going, or you can focus on your own backyard and what's important to you in your own backyard, and continue to cultivate those things. And what's important for me in my own backyard is growing healthy, nutritious food, giving back to Mother Nature, supporting those that I love, supporting myself. And if I focus on that, and if I focus on finding my center in whatever chaotic experience the world is going through, then at least I can be an anchor for others when they have lost their tether and are getting caught up in whatever they're getting caught up in, and believing out of their own misplacement in that moment of their truth. Because the truth is, no one can take your sovereignty. I hear it all the time. Oh, I'm a sovereign being. How dare they, da, da, da. And when they're using that very word sovereignty in that respect out of, the fear of their privacy being taken, and they're not really understanding sovereignty. Because it can't be taken from you. It can't be manipulated by another. And so in a nutshell, Asha, for me, it's about paying attention to where my centeredness is in any given moment. And if I'm out there on a seesaw, feeling pushed and pulled from one camp to the other, then I'm not in here. I'm out there again. And nothing that I create at that vibration is going to serve me. It's just going to feed more into the fear loop, more into the illusions than the delusions. And it's just going to create more of that energy. And so, I use that purely as a barometer of, okay, where am I right now? And if I'm feeling polarized by the this or the that, then I know I've stepped outside of myself.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where I need to come back in within and make choices for myself, my family, from that space.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to save the world from trying to save a world or contribute to the future of where we're going out of a place of fear just creates more chaos and more drama.
Yeah.
And more destruction.
Yeah.
So, if you're wanting to contribute to the greater good and recognize that you are part of the whole, you can be part of the whole and send a rippling effect out there through your fear, or you can be part of the whole and send a rippling effect out of your centeredness.
Awesome.
You are always part of the whole. What you do to yourself, you do to the whole. What you project out onto the whole, you're projecting back onto yourself. So remembering that you are part of the whole, and therefore what you choose to do first and foremostly in your own housekeeping of yourself and your own environment that you do have an element of influence over.
Yeah.
Trying to influence what's happening outside of you from a consciousness of fear, you're just going to create more of that experience of fear on some level. You will manifest more of that energy on some level. So pay attention to what creates harmony and balance in your life. Pay attention to what brings you into a place of peace and stillness. Pay attention to those things. Do more of that. And you will be an anchor for yourself, and you will be an anchor for your family, and you will be an anchor for those that are lost, caught up in drama, stories, chaos. And they are the ones that are really needing a strong anchor, someone centered within themselves to bring them back into a deeper truth of who they are.
Wow. That's so epic. That's super epic. I think that's exactly what everyone needs, Jo. More anchored people in the world, and more anchored people who are the only people who can hope to lead children and families and each other back to anywhere reasonable or good or safe or proper. And I see a lot of fear in this world, as we all do, and I know that the gauntlet of parenthood can be full of fear and concerns due to things, but really listen to what Jo has spoken here, because it's true that whenever we're caught up in that story about the fear and this and that, we're not making the best decisions. We're not putting out the right energy to our family, to our tribe, and
And we're not focused on truth.
Yeah.
Truth in that moment. We're focused on an illusion and a delusion. We are not focused on truth. There are layers of truth. Any truth that you're tapped into that creates fear within you is not a higher truth. It's not the truth.
Yeah.
It's a truth at the level of your mental intellect that gets very easily caught up in stories and self-limiting beliefs and who you are as a soul inhabited within a physical body governed by the third dimension.
Yeah.
And that is very dense energy. And if you get caught up in the density of that energy and you lose sight of who you are beyond the physical being you are, then that's when we start to become anxious and overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's like the fear is just a sign for us to pause. to stop, to take count, not to act, because then it's over. We've spilled the cup then, acting from the place of fear. But if we can use that to reorient and change the perspective and the vision, I think that's its true use. Yeah,
100%.
Hey Jo, this hour has flown past. We're past an hour now, so I thank you so much for your time, and that's a powerful message for everyone to leave on. I think, we've discovered that there's green grass out there, but make sure that you've really properly chewed the grass that you're standing on before you move on, because life is short, sweet, rich, and full of beautiful, amazing things happening today.
Yes, now.
Not tomorrow. It's right now. Yeah. So thank you, Jo, for sharing all of that wisdom with our listeners and our parents. And I hope to have you back on sometime in the future for more wisdom from Jo. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Ash. Loved spending the time with you.
Awesome. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Life Rocks, where we continue to share excellence in childhood learning, development, science, and health. Thanks for listening. Life Rocks.
Thank you so much for listening to the Life Rocks podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then leave us a review. We'll be back soon with more inspiring content, and in the meantime, remember, life rocks.